audience out there listening, out there in the world as well as locally in Leeds. It's Writing on Air, the fourth day, the afternoon of the fourth day. We've got masses of live stuff up here in Studio 3 going through to probably 10 o'clock tonight, and this is the first event of that sequence, and I've no idea what to expect here, except that I a slight inkling, because Dave Napthine here, who's leading us in this journey, came on and was part of Love the Words and did a kind of preview of maybe what we're going to see this afternoon. So without more from me, Singin Jerusalem.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. One, for being here, and two, for listening at home. A bit concerned about that introduction from Peter, because he said he had no idea what I was doing. I'd like to concur that I have no idea what I'm doing. But we'll do our best. We'll try and get along with things. I'm working with two colleagues, or two people I know. Let's not be too bold with colleagues. I wanted a couple of friends to join me. Neither of them could make it. But what I've got is Roger Harrington here. Now, Roger, you might know from the drinks aisle at Tesco, because he is often around there and he does some magnificent things with balloons in his spare time. I'm also joined by Roger Quick, a pianist extraordinaire. I won't tell you why he's extraordinaire, because he'll just have to have the tag put on his ankle again. So we don't want anything like that. Now, if you're expecting this afternoon something which is slick, insightful, with literary pyrotechnics, with joy and wonderment, you are definitely in the wrong place. Because this work is a work in progress. A little bit about it. I've always been fascinated by Jerusalem, the Blake poem. And what's fascinated me, and what it says in it about Jerusalem. Why does a city 2,000 miles away and a time 2,000 years ago have such an impact on us? Why do we talk about Jerusalem? What does it mean? So this has been an exploration. I've also used a particular style of writing which will be relevant and will be known as we go through, and this is called fragment writing, because this is a book of sorts. Now, a lot of things with fragment writing is you don't write sequentially. So there's a lot of dipping about to various parts, because once you get into what Jerusalem means as a metaphor, as a symbol, as an idea, you go into it throughout history, through philosophical concepts, religious ideas. You're going through geography. You're going through expectation. You're going through hope and fear. So I'll start with just setting the scene. I've decided to open this in Birmingham because I decided I wanted somewhere exotic. As I thought, let's go exotic. And set it in Birmingham, we've got to concentrate, introduce a character. And this character called Derek. So what I'll be doing is reading bits. Roger will be helping me read bits. There'll be music coming through. But it's very snapshot. I'll try and keep you in touch with what the hell I'm doing. Right? But if I fail to do that, Peter Spafford is fantastic at guiding me. Because he used to be my carer. Yeah, he did. He was fun. Oh, he was wonderful. He was wonderful. So, Singin Jerusalem. A boy discovers the meaning of life. Two aunties from Stockport. That's what Derek faced over the best china and the best tablecloth that Sunday afternoon. On his best behaviour to match both tablecloth and china, he looked anxiously at the chocolate eclair, the last chocolate eclair. His hand twitched in anticipation, but he had to wait until one of the grown-ups said, "Oh, go on, Derek. You have the last chocolate eclair. You're a growing lad." One of the aunties asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. The right answer for a 10-year-old should have been astronaut, explorer, or footballer, followed by indulgent smiles and murmurs from the adults. When he said, "I want to be happy," there was silence. The looks on the grown-ups' faces would stay with him for years. His dad looked at him as if wanting to know who Derek's father was and said, "Yeah, I'm talking daft, Derek. We're not put on this earth to be happy. Happiness stops us worrying properly." Before snuffling the last eclair and chomping it to destruction. The grown-up smiled and expressed relief at Dad's words, for he had maintained traditional values. Dad's words stayed with Derek throughout his teenage years, his marriage, raising a family, and his climb to the lofty heights of warehouse manager until the warehouse closed and was replaced with a logistics hub built upon the green fields of his childhood. One night at the community centre, a fine example of 60s brutalism, sandwiched between high-rise and the no-ball games masonettes, he was sitting with Mate, his closest friend, whose real name Derek never knew, when Mate turned to him and said, apropos of nothing, as Mate was prone to do, "There was this Greek philosopher, Derek, that lived in Athens." "Okay." "His name was Socrates." "Okay." "Do you know what he said the most important philosophical question was?" "Well, I've no idea, mate." Mate had a sip of his beer. "How can we be happy?" Derek had a sip of his beer. "Wish you wouldn't keep changing the subject, mate." "Oh, not Derek. That was the question he asked." "Who?" "Socrates." "That's not a philosophical question, mate. That's a plea for counselling." "It's a good question, though, Derek. It's a daft question. You think happiness is not possible, then?" "Not if you're a Bromie with aunties from Stockport." "See what you mean, Derek? My aunties were from Scunthorpe."
A man is surprised by a song. Now, Derek volunteered at the community centre. He was no longer working, his kids had long gone, and his missus went shopping to Asda one day and never came back. He was so worried until Mate told him that she'd run off with a Mormon. Apart from the odd moment, he rarely thought of happiness. One of those odd moments happened one morning at the Holy Lamb Evangelical Knitting Circle. They never talked about religion except in terms of the last sermon, church flower arranging, and whether Anselm's ontological argument for God's existence had greater validity than the cosmological proof offered by Aquinas. Sometimes that argument got so heated, Derek would threaten them with Nietzsche. It began with Lillian Sanctimonious proclaiming that Jesus loves me, this I know, 'cause the Bible tells me so. To which other cheek Jeanette asked if that meant she was happy. The snort that came from Mrs. Vale of Tears Atkins stopped everyone. "We endure, that's what we do. It's our only hope of salvation." This brought smiles to all their faces, and they began a spirited, but not too spirited, rendition of "O'er the Gloomy Hills of Darkness." It was all in tune, for they were members of the community choir that was regularly invited to give concert at happy events, as a reminder to people not to get too carried away with enjoyment. Derek liked the choir. Not all choir members could sing very well, but that hardly mattered. It was about friendship, not musical perfection. The choir leader, Carmen, a graduate from a community music course and herself a fine singer, coaxed performances out of members that could bring tears to your eyes. That night, there was a rehearsal, so Derek opened up the concert room and switched on the heating. He then unshuttered the bar so that those who wished to drink could drink, while those who didn't drink had something to disapprove of. Everyone was happy in their West Midlands way. A cold night, and the choir members huddled in with much chatter about sharp winds and iced rain. A good sing would cheer them up. Slave songs, disaster songs, songs about love lost and found, songs from the gulag, incomprehensible songs. Towards the end, the choir leader suggested singing Jerusalem. They'd never sung that as a choir. Song sheets were distributed, much to the annoyance of those who thought everyone should know Jerusalem, and if they didn't, they should take up dominoes. It came as no surprise. They sang with enthusiasm, as if greeting an old friend. In many ways they were, and isn't that the strangest thing? Later in the bar, Derek said to mate, "Not sung that Jerusalem for years." "Reminds me of school," said mate, "and I hated school, and the Mrs. sings it at the Women's Institute, and I hate her." They sat in silence, which made both of them content. Over the years, things that needed to be said had been said, and the rest of all their in-depth conversations, discussions, and arguments, things were still the same. Politicians didn't have a Scooby, and Birmingham City were crap. Derek shut the community centre for the night. He checked the security lights, pulled the shutters down, and locked the doors. He hunched his way home, thinking how much he'd enjoyed hearing Jerusalem. And although he'd no idea what any of it meant, it didn't matter, because it was a Boston tune. Good old gob mover, as his Sunday school teacher used to say.
Walking home, he heard the tick-tock rhythm of Lisa Cartwright's high heels. She knew how to walk in heels, did Lisa, not like the young girls who looked as if they were stilt walkers with constipation. "Can I walk with you, Derek?" asked Lisa. "Course you can, Bab." Lisa was one of the younger members of the choir, a passable soprano with boobs that shimmied on the high notes. Derek thought her one of the nicest people he knew and far too young to be widowed. Being a school teacher, she knew about all sorts of things, which of course made her a liability on quiz nights. "Can I ask you something, Lisa?" "Of course you can." "What do the words of Jerusalem mean?" "Well, it's poetry, Derek." "Right. What I mean, Derek, is that sometimes poetry is not straightforward in its meaning." "Is it bollocks then?" "Sorry, I didn't mean to swear." "Oh, it's okay, Derek, I hear worse in reception class." On reaching Lisa's house, just down from Derek's, she said, "Would you like to stop for a cup of tea?" Momentarily, Derek did not know what to say. "Don't look so frightened, Derek. I don't fancy you." Derek was relieved and very disappointed. "It's just I thought you might like to chat a bit more." "Are you sure?" "Of course I am. I wouldn't ask otherwise. I can't talk about poetry when it's so cold." The central heating was on. The house felt warm, safe, friendly. She kicked off her heels with a, "Oh, that's better," and put on the fluffy slippers her daughter had brought her as an act of revenge. "I like to sit at the kitchen table," so Derek followed her there. As Lisa made the tea, he took in the surroundings, ignoring her commentary on the evening's events, with random nods of agreement and grunted affirmatives. 27 years of marriage to a woman who never shut up had made him a master of that particular social skill. When mate asked him the following day what Lisa's kitchen was like, "Because my missus is curious," Derek said, "Well, it sort of had everything, you know, that I've got in my kitchen, but in a different order, if you get me drift." Mate did, but his missus wouldn't. Tea made and served, Lisa said, "Jerusalem is one of my favourites." Derek sipped his tea. "The words are beautiful and the tune is magnificent." "Mind if I have a fag?" "Well, I'd prefer it if you didn't, Derek." "All right, fair enough." Talking poetry without a fag and after 4 pints is not how he anticipated ending a day when he got up that morning. He liked his routine, did Derek, when he got in at night. A cup of tea, and now and again, a peek at some pornography as part of a reminiscence project. At least he had a cup of tea, and truth be told, these days a nice cup of tea knocked watching porn into a cocked hat. "It's full of imagery and metaphor, Derek. Don't you agree?" said Lisa. Maybe, but what's it mean? Well, some people see it as a spiritual journey, others see it as a call to arms for social change. Is that why it's sung at the proms then? I think that's more about tradition, Derek, patriotism and people feeling that being English marks them out as special. So the bloke who wrote it, William Blake, didn't really know what he was meaning, did he? I mean, I'm no scholar, right? I never thought much of poetry. Mind you, I did meet a poet once. At least that's what he said he was. He wore poetry clothes, you know. Yeah, like them brought by a blind man in a charity shop. Before Derek left, Lisa gave him a slim volume of William Blake's poetry. He was quite touched by that. No one had given him poetry before. But when he got home, he was in a quandary. What should he do before going to bed? Read that Blake bloke or watch some porn? He switched on the telly for the football highlights. I'd like to ask you a question now, which is this. When did you, anybody here, first hear Jerusalem? At school. At school. At school. School. Right. All right then, when you sing the hymn Jerusalem, what do you associate it with? You just have what? Pictures in the head of the spears. Oh, you have those sort of pictures in your head? So what happens when it gets to the desire bits? What pictures do you have then?
When I was thinking of it as a child, that would mean anything to me.
No, but as an adult, what does it mean?
Still don't really know.
Right. So, what does it mean to you now? Oh, Peter!
If it's turned up, anybody? Yeah.
It reminds me of school, but it also reminds me of being vigorous and lively, and because that's invariably where it came. We were going to sing it and we were going to let
Right.
rip, and I really enjoyed that.
Did you say vigorous?
Yeah.
I thought you said bigamous for the moment. I thought, well, it is William Blake, you know. I thought we're in the right direction. Vigorous, that's an interesting word, vigorous.
Anybody
At the
else?
back.
Phil?
Anyone else up there? Someone else up there got some thought?
Kev?
No?
No,
No,
nothing
we're
at all.
okay then.
I would say, can I just put in my benefit?
Yeah.
I suppose when I sing it now, I love singing it, but feel slightly embarrassed about singing it and that I shouldn't enjoy singing it. I actually think it's a great tune and I love the words, but I think, oh, is this a bit of imperialism and should I stop enjoying myself?
You're right, yes. It's an interesting thing because it provokes this different reactions. Sorry, is there someone else coming?
We were just talking about Jerusalem, the hymn, and how it makes you feel and anything about it.
It's my favourite, actually. I absolutely love it, and I love singing it. And I've sung it since I was really little. And it has a real poignant thing for me because my mum was a refugee from Vienna. She came over in 1938, and she used to sing this song and know that it was a song about England's green and pleasant lands, and that it was somewhere she was going to be safe. So it's interesting that the reasons that you were saying, I sort of don't have those. I've shifted my reasons for it, and I love it. And I sang it last year, actually, at a festival, the World on Your Doorstep Festival. They asked me to sing it for that.
Thank
Should
you.
say
Thank
that
you very much indeed.
Alison is a professional singer and she's on later at 6:45. Just a little trailer there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I like the way you slipped in the advert there. That was fantastic. That's very clever. No, very professional. And I think one of the things I've been looking at as I've been going round, working with people, because I've been working with people all the time to try and get an understanding of what this means, is the variety of reactions, is the variety of emotions that it conjures. I mean, there is what you might call, a brilliant play by Jez Butterworth, Jerusalem, but that focuses on one particular thing. This, to me, is all about something much, much bigger. So I'm finding my way through, so thank you for helping me there. I think I'll return now to what I've been scribbling, and ask Mr. Harrington to pick up.
The morning after Birmingham City lost to Hull to an own goal in the last minute, a man searches for something to fill the emptiness of his soul. He couldn't help it, and it did him no favours. Derek woke thinking of Lisa, about how lovely she was, and that if he was 20 years younger, she'd reject him on a daily basis. No matter. He remembered her animation when she talked about Jerusalem, and how that sort of showed how good a teacher she must be. Enthusiastic. She said how exciting it was that Jerusalem could conjure so many different emotions and thoughts. But why build Jerusalem when there already is a Jerusalem? Derek had asked. It's a new Jerusalem, Derek, a new Jerusalem. That's what Blake's talking about. Suppose that makes sense, given the present one seems a bit of a shithole, with all them different God-botherers. It does seem a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? 3 different religions, all descended from Abraham. Is that right? All descended from Abraham? Then Abraham should have clattered their heads together when they were nippers. Now there's a thought, Derek, as they all believe in the same God. And has God said anything to them? Well, they all claim he has, but it would seem that what he said to one, he's not said to the other. Oh, devious bugger. Well, I've never heard God described in those terms before, Derek. Well, I hope I've not upset you, Lisa. You teaching in a C of E school? Of course not. We've more atheists than Christians, what with the teacher shortage. It was at that point Lisa said she must go to bed, otherwise she would not be able to deal with the morning. As he was leaving, he was sure he heard her say, God bless.
Before I read the next bit, I just want to put, does anybody watch Talking Pictures? Yeah? Have you ever seen that disclaimer?
Yes.
You know, there is language and attitudes which are reflective of the time. You have been warned. Because we're now going back to when Derek was little in the 50s. Now, as he was drinking his morning cuppa, Derek wondered why Jerusalem meant so much to others, but nothing much to him. He remembered sitting cross-legged at primary school singing it at assembly, along with other hymns he didn't understand the words of. Good tunes, but with some strange words. One evening he asked his dad what a pilgrim was. A pilgrim? Yes, Dad, a pilgrim. Why do you want to know about a pilgrim? Well, we sang about one at school today. Well, they walk to holy places, Derek. Mum goes to holy places, doesn't she? She goes to church. Yes, Derek, but she goes on the bus. So a pilgrim's not allowed on buses. No. The bus conductor wouldn't let this blackie on the bus the other day. Was that because he was a pilgrim? No, I wouldn't have thought so. Why wasn't he allowed on the bus then? Derek didn't get an answer to that question. This surprised him as Dad mouthed off about immigrants all the time, until Mum had to shut him up. Although he didn't know what a pilgrim was, he sung about them at school and Sunday school. When he eventually realised what a pilgrim was, he asked, "You know pilgrims, Mum?" "Yes." "They walk to holy places far away, don't they?" "Yes." "Why don't they catch a bus?" "Because that won't make them holy." "So because you catch a bus to church, you're not really holy then, are you, Mum?" "Oh, is that the time? I need to get a wriggle on, get the tea on." So, thinking about the previous night with Lisa, he wondered whether if a new Jerusalem was built, as the Blake bloke wanted, would people make pilgrimages there? Another thought struck him. This was worrying, as he didn't like to have thoughts in quick succession, as he gave him the backdoor gallops. Now, the thought that came next was, if Jerusalem is such a special place that people have pilgrimages to it, why don't they stay there? He didn't have an answer, so he asked mate in the community centre bar later that night. He asked the same question, why don't they stay there? Where it says Roger reads the following.
Oh, no. But we didn't do that bit before. He's changed his mind. That's trouble working with him. Maybe it's like going to Tenerife, Derek. You go the first time, the sun is shining, you can get a full English breakfast, a pint of mild, and Pepper's mini market sells the Daily Mail. You feel good, don't you? I had food poisoning, mate. A dodgy paella had bloody seafood in it. What I'm trying to say is that you can have such a great time, feel so, ready to face the world, that you want to go back the next year. And if it's been a shit year, and for most of us every year is a shit year, you want to get that same feeling of, you know what I mean? So you go to the same hotel, go to Pepper's to buy a Daily Mail, drink a pint of mild, and have a full English breakfast every day. To feel born again, mate. That's what Tenerife does for me. And that's sort of what pilgrims do. Derek pondered. It made sense that did that. Mate talked a lot of sense, so Derek thought he'd venture another question. You know they started singing Jerusalem in the choir? I do. You've been thinking. Mate is uneasy. That opening line? Mate is more uneasy. And did those feet? Mate is now very uneasy. The thing is, mate, whose feet are they? To be honest, Derek, I couldn't give a shit.
So, in the writing of this, and I say it's fragment writing, I kept dipping about to various, and it's not finished by any stretch of the imagination, to various topics and locations. So what I then did was a scene with Parry, or about Parry, the guy who actually composed the tune Jerusalem. And this is what I have called Parry Has a Ponder.
If a tune is nice to sing, it doesn't matter what the words mean. They'll be happy enough with that. That's what Bridges had said, but will I be happy enough? Write the dots on the page, the universal hieroglyphic that gives the words another life. Maybe meaning specific, maybe one they do not want, maybe one they do not need. When Bridges came to see me and over sherry asked for a tune, one that's good to sing, old man, a Parry tune, if you like, I was flattered. Poet laureate, old school friend, wanting me to write a tune, to fit some words that he had written, but they were words he hadn't written.
Written by Blake, William that is, in a pub in Felpham many years ago, where William Blake sat in old Joe's seat. When old Joe entered and Blake wouldn't move when asked by old Joe, because Blake was writing a lyric about some holy place, until old Joe said, shift your arse, the place you're sat in is my holy place. If you don't, you will find I'll shove my tankard up your behind and into purgatory. Blake gathered himself and his now broken thoughts shuffled and scuffled to another place where he dropped them all over the table, then muttered them into a new constellation that would baffle stargazers night after night. For he'd show old Joe not to mess with a poet. They'll get their revenge, not in the flurrying fists of a beer-scattered brawl, but with random rhyming that will twist your brain. Maybe meaning, whether you are drunk, whether you are sober. So you write the dots on the page, the universal hieroglyphic that gives the words another life, maybe meaning specific, maybe one they do not need, maybe one they do not want.
Oh, William Blake, yes, William Blake, the trouble you've caused with your mystical musings. Why not say simple things, just spoken plain, not metaphysical metaphor with complex confusings? We want badly sung folk tunes of a farming day, of bread and cheese and a roll in the hay, the ancient ways of incest and poaching, and not let religion start encroaching. We want doggerel with a chorus of two about hating strangers, especially the Jew, of sunny days without a care, not violent verse from God's nightmare.
We pick up on Parry later on. We pick up on the story of William Blake later on. But now we return to the moment when Derek leaves in search of the thing which began to occupy me more and more, which is not Jerusalem, but the New Jerusalem. This idea of the New Jerusalem to inspire a future place of wonder. So I'm going to ask you to think about something while this is being read, which is, where do you think, if New Jerusalem was built, and it's supposed to be built in the UK or England, where would it be built? An ordinary bloke begins his journey. So there Derek stood on a New Street Station platform, bashed and buffeted by hustle and bustle of hurrying comes and goings, of announcements emerging from a great unknown, of pissed-off diesel trains grumbling with boredom before whinging their way to somewhere or other. And there Derek stood, embattled by doubt and feelings of stupidity and the empty-handed pointlessness of it all. Lisa told him he was having an existential crisis. He told mate who said, "What the bloody hell is one of them?" And once Derek explained as best he could what Lisa said, he supped his pint and then replied, "It's because you're not getting your leg over, Derek. I've been having an existential crisis, whatever it is, for a few years. Ask Lisa if she'd oblige you with a philosophical discussion between the sheets. You feel better, but of course, you'll be anxious about being able to get it up again, which is a better anxiety than a meaning of life anxiety. Or is it? I mean, my will is taking early retirement to let me concentrate on my carrots. They're all that's growing firm in my life, Derek, decent size and all." So Derek stood waiting for the train to the New Jerusalem. First stop, Milton Keynes. There was no one there to see him off, not even Lisa or mate. Never mind, it would be acutely embarrassing anyway. Wouldn't it? It would. But still, would have been nice. Would have, nice. Never mind. All right, mate, what are you doing here? Here to see you off. You said you couldn't be asked. Well, Mrs. wanted a trip into town, it being her birthday. Well, shouldn't you be with her? I'll do that later. Oh, I'm glad to see your miserable face, mate. Yes, I know, to remind you of the good times we've had, Derek, and the shit times to come. They stood in silence, having said all that needed to be said. Tick-tock. The next train to arrive at tick-tock. See it, say it, sort it. The train standing at tick-tock. And did those feet.
And did those feet
They both heard it.
in ancient times
Coming closer.
walk upon England's mountains green?
Definitely closer.
Was
And before they knew it, there they were, the members of the community choir. Aside them on the platform, some people joined in. Strangers, railway staff, while others looked on, bemused at the sight and the sound and wondering whether it was all going to kick off. In Derek's experiences, singing arrows of desire that triggered the mayhem. The train to Milton Keynes pulled in. Derek climbed aboard, wondering why Lisa wasn't there, to the varied shouts of, "All the best, our kid, bon voyage, daft bugger." And the singing's closed. The train gone. Derek gone. The choir gone. Mate walked down the ramp to the bottom of New Street to join the hurly-burly of the city centre and steel himself for the inevitable birthday visit to the Bank restaurant. He wasn't too surprised to see Father Declan carrying a placard on which was written, "Birmingham is the New Jerusalem," on one side and "God help us" on the other. Mate wasn't sure whether the two phrases were connected. Declan walked straight past Mate without recognising him. Derek settled into his seat, trying not to think of cigarettes. He was tapped on the shoulder and looked up to see Mrs. Mate looking down at him. "What are you doing here, Doreen?" Going to Milton Keynes. Oh, happy birthday, by the way. Ta. Is this by way of a birthday treat then, Doreen? Well, you could say that. Does mate know? Not yet. When will you tell him? When he notices I'm gone. That could be tomorrow or 6 months' time. Doreen, why on earth are you going to Milton Keynes? I'm going with you, Derek, to find the New Jerusalem. You know about that, Doreen. Well, mate has never stopped talking about it since you decided to go. That surprised Derek. It touched him. He could have come with us. I said, Derek, but for mate to search for a better world, a utopia sort of thing, would undermine his sense of self. Enthusiastic and optimistic, he'd lose all his friends. And here you are, said Derek. Here I am. You know, Doreen, I never expected company on this trip. Certainly not someone as lovely as you. Now, Derek, I always tell a man straight off that I don't want an affair. I hope you don't mind. I'm not wanting an affair, Doreen, with you or anyone. You say that, Derek, and I know you truly believe it. But one night we'll be under a canopy of stars, drinking wine as a wind of perfumes ease around us. Our fingers will touch accidentally, and before you know it, we are lovers, waiting to be blessed by the dawn. Not in Milton Keynes, bub. Well, there is that, of course. Mate said lack of sex had sent you into an existential crisis. Quite understandable, it happens. Mind you, in all his writings on existentialism, I don't think Camus ever mentioned sex. Who's Camus? Well, he kept golf for Algeria. Well, he knew what he was talking about then, didn't he, Doreen? Well, I'm not sure I'd go that far.
They never spoke again until they reached Milton Keynes Central, where Doreen said to Derek, well, here we are. They made their way to the bus stop for the 20-minute journey to Milton Keynes coachway. They scanned the timetable and the destination board, but there was no indication of any departures for New Jerusalem. What if there is no longer a coach to the New Jerusalem? Said Doreen. Well, we could ask a member of staff. I'll go, said Doreen, headed off to accost an official-looking person. Derek watched her walk with the determination that terrified mate, especially when family came to visit. He checked his mobile to see if there was a text from Lisa. There wasn't. She said she'd be there to see him off, and now he was a mixture of concern for Lisa and feelings of rejection. He thought of messaging her, but he was unsure what to say. Doreen returned. He said he had no idea, but there was a coach about to leave for Penzance if we needed to get away from Milton Keynes. The diesel-fumed dusk slowly dissipated as one by one coaches left until the coach station was empty. All Derek and Doreen could do now was settle down for the night and wait. You know, Derek, we're going to have some explaining to do when the police or security guards arrive to move us on. We're not doing anything wrong, Doreen. We're just waiting for the coach. And we don't know what coach we have to catch or when it will leave. With that, he set up his camping stove in a sheltered doorway and boiled water for pasta. What are we going to have with the pasta then, Derek? This, and he produced a couple of packets of dried soup. Simple and nourishing, Doreen. Simple and nourishing. Well, why don't we get a KFC or Nando's? Because the coach for Jerusalem might come. You know how long things take in these fast food places. They were soon eating in a companionable silence of culinary uncertainty. Afterwards, Derek swilled the plates with water from the bog and then lit up a cigarette. Doreen wasn't impressed and asked Derek if he was going to smoke a lot. I don't know, Doreen. It'll be as the mood takes me. Or as the craving gets to you. You know, kissing you must be a little like kissing an ashtray. But you're not going to kiss us, are you? Well, that's hardly the point, Derek. Derek thought it was, but never mind. He stretched out across the seats and settled down to sleep, wondering whether mate was missing Doreen yet. And he wondered again why Lisa hadn't been there to see him off. She hadn't even sent a text to wish him good luck. He again thought of messaging her, but he wasn't very good at that sort of thing, so best say nothing and wait for Lisa to message him. He was just drifting off to sleep when Doreen spoke. We sing Jerusalem at the WI meetings. I know, Doreen. Don't know why. He drifted off to sleep a second time when Doreen said, "It's a lovely sing, Derek." "It is," said Derek. "Sweet dreams, Doreen." He closed his eyes and summoned sleep once more, and it came nearer and nearer when, "Do you know what the words mean, Derek?" Scurried his sleep away. "Do you, Derek, know what the words mean?" "No, I sodding well don't." "Didn't quite catch that, Derek. Mate said you were spending a lot of time with Lisa because she was explaining it to you. Or were you two up to something else?" "Such as?" "Well, you know." "Are we shagging? That's what you want to know." "There's no need to be crude, Derek." "The answer is no." "Are you sure?" Doreen teased. "I think I should know, Doreen. I've not had sex since that missus left, but I sort of remember what we did. Now I'd like to go to sleep if you don't mind." And with that, he made himself as comfortable as he could, farted loudly to mark his territory, and drifted off, wondering what on earth he was doing there.
Right, they fall asleep at the station. They are then interrupted by two security guards who wonder what they're doing. There's a whole scene about that. Eventually what happens is that the two security guards join them on the trip to find this new Jerusalem, because they're all coming. It's a bit like, what's it called? J.B. Priestley is The Good Companions, where people just gather and they set off somewhere. It's a classic, classic structure. So they're setting off. But then we go to this one now. Page 23.
Okay. Queen's Hall. Robert Bridges, Poet Laureate, sat with Parry at the Queen's Hall in Langham Place, London, on the evening of March the 28th, 1916, the hubbub of anticipation.
Deflecting the remnants of the day before at St. Eloi, a village between Wipers and Messines, where an order was given not by Francis Younghusband, explorer and a man of imperial derring-do, who said that the war was a spiritual conflict, a holy war, the fight for right, but by captain of the brigade and the troops, who told his men that on his order a movement will be made by Younghusband
to rouse his countrymen to serve in the sacred cause
that the British soldiers could not see as they stared across the cratered mudscape to the German trenches, and nor could they hear Younghusband whispering in their ears that you are fighting the battle of all humanity and preserve the human rights for generations to come, when they thought they were here to recover the bluff taken by the Hun and stop them spying on British trenches and roads.
While the Queen's Hall filled with people in finery, espying who was there, and filled the air with gossipy intrusion and patriotic goodness, as Bridges turned to Parry and said that thanks to his setting of Jerusalem,
they had new ordinance for this war between Christ and the devil, and the soldiers in the British trench searched the early morning mist for signs of the devil. But all they saw was Robert Bridges, Poet Laureate, stumbling in the trench, exhorting that this war, horrible war,
could purify the nation of its domestic boils. And that was all very well, but had Mr. Bridges
a treatment for lice, flea bites, rat bites, trenchfoot, and the infestation of boredom and fear. But they surely knew
the English deserved a whipping of public school proportions, for Mr. Bridges had said that England must awake and let the punishment and suffering cleanse to salvation.
To beauty through blood and kissing the Sergeant Major, as Mr. Bridges stepped away to catch the boat to England. For the next night, March the 28th, he had to be at the Queen's Hall, Langham Place, to hear
the whistle that hauled the men above the trench to a waterlogged madness of mud churned by mines and shell fire. And did those feet take them up and over to
where Parry sat waiting for Jerusalem, uncertain as to why he had put his left-leaning liberalism in his coat pocket and taken the 30 pieces of silver of schoolboy friendship to write a tune that
the soldiers in St. Eloi Trench couldn't hear because it was just before dawn, and the bombardment began with shells landing as mines exploded, to guiding this tone-deaf infantry to advance in atonal confusion.
As Parry would have wondered what sort of tune Butterworth would have written if Bridges had commissioned him instead of Parry. And as the moment came nearer for Jerusalem to be sung, Parry at the Queen's Hall thought, how nice it would have been if Butterworth had accepted, as
Jerusalem was obscured by cordite and fumes, smoke and mist, debris and death, and the high-flown poetry was camouflaged, the boom of battery that blew to pieces their bows of burning gold, filling the air with so much confusion that the...
Parry would have wondered what sort of... I've lost myself. Confused, sorry. That the countenance divine was forced to blink away the smoke as a descant moment that pleased Parry the composer found harmony with swords in their hands that scattered death, blood and mutilation in a miracle carnage that did not stain the evening dress of those who stood to applaud the first sight and sound of Jerusalem.
As those injured by the sword and spear, no longer sleeping in their hands until the blood was washed away by tears from the Holy Lamb of God, while the chatter of congratulation drowned all the noise of St. Eloi. And without saying goodbye, William, Blake and Job left the Queen's Hall to make their way home, buying a bag of roast chestnuts to eat on their way.
So as you can say, we've moved now to the time of the first singing of Jerusalem. As you say, we move into this place, this New Jerusalem, gathering people as we try and get there. So I'd just like your thoughts to finish off with now of where is the New Jerusalem? Oh, Mr. Mike's coming.
Mr. Mike.
God's own county, obviously.
Where is?
God's own county.
God's own county, County Durham.
Defend yourself.
I'd kept quiet about you coming
God's
from there.
own county.
You've blown it now.
Yeah.
Somewhere just the other side of Farsley.
Other side of Barnsley.
Farsley.
Farsley? Yeah. Where's Farsley? Where's it near Feltham? Oh, you mean Blake actually wrote... Did Blake write Jerusalem in Farsley?
Could have done.
He could have done.
Prove it otherwise.
Farsley. Why Farsley?
I've no idea. Just came in
That's
here.
as good as any, isn't it? We search for the New Jerusalem, the better world. And what's there? Oh, no idea. I don't know what's going to be. Someone will be there. Anywhere else?
Would it not now be in the metaverse?
Sorry?
Would it not now be in the metaverse? The New Jerusalem.
Don't look at me, Dave.
The metaverse.
The metaverse. Oh, metaverse. Oh, that's that thing, isn't it? That thing. It's in the metaverse. Oh, dear God. Does that mean we get to the New Jerusalem and there's Elon Musk? Yeah, because that is quite frightening. Or Mark Zuckerberg looking at you going, well, hi. Welcome to Jerusalem. Anywhere else? Thank you very much. No?
Epsom Downs.
Epsom Downs.
Epsom Downs.
I think that's something.
Why there?
Something you take for.
Because they've got a good race course there.
Oh, it's great. So you can have a bet in Jerusalem, can you? That's fantastic. So you're going to the New Jerusalem. This is a beautiful place. Near Farsley. Right. Twinned with the metaverse. Right. And there's these beautiful golden palaces. And there, in the middle of these golden palaces, there's a bookies. No, is that what you're saying?
And you have, who'd win out of the four horses of the apocalypse?
Yeah. Hey! I think on that note we'll finish. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you at home.
Thank you very much indeed, Dave, Roger. And Roger, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I don't know about other people. Did we enjoy that? Well, we did. And we'd love to see, I'm sure, this, whatever you're doing with it, Dave, finish it off.
I will, yeah.
And
yeah.
bring it back here.
Oh, I'd love to. Honestly, I'd love
Yeah.
to. I mean, I'm very happy, I'll be honest with you, to do more and then do another work in progress.
You're very welcome
You know,
here.
if you want.
Yeah.
Because this is what I'm doing. I'm reading bits of it and getting people to tell me, you know, what it is. Because I have no idea what I've started writing. I do not know. but I know it's something that means something to so many people. I mean, one section that I will be going into fairly soon, started doing, is the 1960s, 50s and 60s, because after the First World War, they talked about building the New Jerusalem. You know, and this as well, book I came across, New Jerusalem, the Good City and the Good Society, about God and things. What I wanted to do was I wanted to locate it in the ordinariness of day-to-day life. And go there. I'm going to shut up now because I've talked.
One thing though, Dave, have you asked Derek?
Sorry?
Have you asked Derek?
Ask Derek what?
Well, you don't know what you're writing, but maybe Derek would know. Anyway, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Derek, no. Have you asked Derek what you're writing?
I didn't know you were from South Wales. Good Lord, that's a lovely Welsh accent, that's it.
This is
Bab?
so. Just to say that Irene, who's now from South Wales and Birmingham, is on next with the fantastic piece called "You Can Take the Girl Out of Ireland." So hang around, audience, have a cup of tea, and we'll come back in about 15-20 minutes. And for Irene, thank you so much to
And
Dave,
thank
Roger,
you.
and Roger.
Thank you, everyone. Really pleased.
Writing on the wall, writing on air. From Chapel FM Arts Centre on East Leeds FM.